Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to our online science presentation skills workshop. Even though we are not having this session face-to-face, we can still engage virtually due to technology, and we hope that you can also learn some useful things today. This is the overview. We'll briefly remind you of this year's competition process, following which we shall offer some tips for slides design, as well as things to note when you're giving your verbal delivery, so that you can be an effective presenter for your research project. Finally, we'll look into some of the possible options for video recording. But first up, let's look at the competition process.
Hello everyone, I'm Mrs. Lim. I'll be sharing with you briefly about the competition process, as well as some pointers for your slides design, the slides that you'll be using for your video presentation if your group is selected. About the competition process. The registration deadline for the projects from the same school is on the 12th February. Please clearly indicate the category that you are submitting your project for, whether it's in category A for science research or category B in innovations. By 5th March, we will be expecting your synopsis and your presentation deck for the pre-judging round. Please note that poster is no longer a requirement. So is your report. There's no need to submit a report, but submit a synopsis and a presentation deck. In the earlier letter that's been sent out to school, we have indicated some instructions for your presentation deck. For example, you need to use at least font size 24. This is for science research. The maximum number of slides for the entire PowerPoint deck will be 25. Please make sure that your supporting tables, graphs, charts, and diagrams are clearly labeled and in sequential order. This is remembering that there is no report submission. The only thing that the judges use for the pre-judging round will be the presentation deck. This will be the instructions given for category B in innovations. The maximum number of slides for this category is only 15. The schools will be informed of the shortlisted project by 31st March, and the shortlisted project groups will therefore submit a 5-minute video presentation by 7 April. And this year, for the elements, we will have a live Q&A component that will happen on the 20th of April. So please do take note of the dates. Now, the key question asked will be, can the same presentation deck be used for the 5-minute presentation video? So I'm going to share briefly some of the things to consider before we answer this question. First, we really need to know that it is a 5-minute presentation. So the group is not allowed to go beyond the 5 minutes presentation. And the key idea to remember when you design your slides for the video presentation is to clearly present your project idea development. So it will be good, for example, to start out with a context. How did you come up with the project idea, for example? Was there a certain problem, a certain tension, or a challenge, or your group saw an opportunity? And if there is a target audience that the context is considering, do let us know. And then tell us about your solution. What was your objectives when you design your methodology? Or what was your approach? Mainly looking into your results discussion analysis with the key evidence that you're going to present. And then finally end off with a conclusion what is the outcome, what are your learnings, what are some future opportunities that or future direction that your project can work on or go into. So with all this in mind, I think the key idea is it's only a 5-minute presentation. It is actually not possible to use all the slides in your presentation deck. For example, if you are in category A, the science research category, if you're submitting 24 slides in that presentation deck, then it is a bit not realistic that you are presenting all 24 slides within the 5 minutes constraint. And considering that there is no report, some of your slides in the presentation deck that is submitted for the prejudging round might be text heavy. So for video presentation, you will need to reorganize the text heavy slides so that your presentation is clear. And definitely not all these sections need to be presented. For example, there's no need to go through your methodology step by step, okay? There's no need to present your bibliography or your references. So you will need to be very clear what are the sections relevant to showcase the project idea development. Now I will go into the video presentation slide design. Okay, this is meant for video presentation. The key thing is to look into the visual appeal of your slides. So these are some pointers to share, like what are the do's, okay? For example, select a template that will present a clean and a neat layout. Look into the color contrast between the words and your background. And then your slides preferably are text light, not too wordy. Think about how you can employ graphic organizers, pie charts, or flow charts to help you organize your text in a visually appealing format. Make use of transitions and animations to help your audience to focus to what you're talking about, and then use relevant images. Let me elaborate. First point, okay, about the point on good color contrast between words and background. The idea is use a background that is lightly colored, and then your word stands out clearly. Okay, this box that is dark colored blue, for example, using black words may strain. It may be a bit straining to read. Okay, especially if it is text heavy. Okay, go for a light background with your words clear. Font size should at least be 24. The size that you're looking at for this particular line that says font size at least 24, this is a font size 24. You will notice that it is actually quite small already. So the words here per se will be less than 24. Okay, font size 24, and it will be quite a strain to read, especially later on if you need to consider the kind of format that you're doing your recording. Your slides should be text light. Therefore, it will require you to think through what are the content that you want to put in. Like I say, meaningful in the light of showcasing your project idea development. Therefore, not all these sections are required. The key idea is that your slides should not be too wordy. Okay, avoid long sentences. Okay, and all the more you should not be reading word for word from your slides. Use point form, and then think about if you can use graphic organizers to organize your points. Use relevant images to share your message. Okay, this is a comparison of a text-heavy slide as compared to one that is showing a visual or relevant image. In terms of image, if it is appropriate, okay, choose one that has a human feature. Okay, it brings across a more a human touch in that sense. Consider how you can best convey your key information to the audience. For example, in this case, you're presenting your results. Okay, it's good that you can present let's say, a graph rather than a text description. So you can summarize the information with clearly labeled charts or diagram. In this case, you see that the axes are clearly labeled. You can include caption, concise caption, to help your viewers or audience to understand the key points. You can highlight key information by boxing up, circling certain important features that you want to mention. This is an example of the don'ts. Okay, what are the pitfalls when presenting your statistical charts? Looking into, again, choice of color. In this case, the choice of color is not very distinct between the different so-called sets of experiment or the choice of the variable used. The text may be too small, okay, for your audience to see clearly. Axes is not labeled, units is missing. So all the best when you are designing your slides. And most importantly, enjoy the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lim, for your sharing on the design of slides. So if you didn't catch the point about presentation deck, let me reiterate. The presentation deck is what you will need to submit for the pre-judging round. Its purpose is to provide a summary of your project for judges to decide whether it is eligible for the final round. You are to use the template given to you, and the instructions on what to do can be found in the first slide. Then, if your project is selected for the final round, you will prepare a 5-minute presentation video. And for that, you may choose to design a new set of slides for that purpose. You do not need to use the presentation deck template at all. It is really up to you on how you want to produce that 5-minute video. Hope this helps. Next, we'll look at audience engagement through your verbal delivery as well as body language. And let's have Mrs. Chai to speak to us about this.
In this section, I would like to share with you some points which I hope will be useful to you when you prepare for the oral presentation of your project. For an oral presentation to be good and effective, you must consider 5 areas. First, clarity. Second, coherence. Third, pace. Fourth, confidence. 5, audience engagement. Now, I will be going into each point in detail in the following slides. First point, clarity. Now, what do you mean by clarity? It means that you speak clearly, you enunciate your words, and you will also speak at a pace that is slightly slower than your normal conversation. Why do you need to do that? Because it will help the audience to focus on active listening, so that they can focus on your argument, so that they can follow your presentation. Now, you will also speak at the right volume, not too soft, because if you are soft, the audience cannot follow you. Now, I would like to share with you a short video clip, and I want you to pay attention to the audio so that you have a better understanding on what is clarity.
In 1967, researchers from around the world gathered to answer a long-running scientific question. Just how long is a second? It might seem obvious at first. A second is the tick of a clock, the swing of a pendulum, the time it takes to count to 1. But how precise are those measurements? What is that length based on? And how can we scientifically define this fundamental unit of time? For most of human history, ancient civilizations measured time with unique calendars that tracked the steady march of the night sky. In fact, the second as we know it wasn't introduced until the late 1500s, when the Gregorian calendar began to spread across the globe alongside British colonialism.
Second point is on coherence. Now, how do you ensure coherence in your presentation? It means that you will have to coordinate the presentation in such a way that the flow of ideas, the flow of arguments is logical and the flow is consistent. And the presentation has clear relationships between the different parts. So when you present in a systematic manner, your audience will be able to follow your argument step by step. The third point that I want to talk about is the pace. You must pace out your presentation such that you do not exceed the given time for your presentation. Now, how do you adhere to the limited time period? You make sure that your presentation is succinct, meaning that you only present important information, key points, and you will omit unnecessary words. Okay, now in order to keep to the allocated time, it does not mean that you have to speak very fast. Remember, you must be clear. So you still need to pause at appropriate juncture so that your presentation is smooth, your presentation is very clear. Point 4, confidence. How to present a confident image when you are speaking. Most importantly, you must know your facts well. Know your project well. Second, practice and rehearse with your friends. Ask for feedback so that you can improve. Thirdly, you also need to prepare for question and answer. Some of us may be thinking of using cue cards, but it is advisable to use the cue cards only for reference, only when it is needed. Please do not read from your cue card because it will come across as not confident, not prepared. Point 5, audience engagement. Now, when you speak, make sure you maintain eye contact with the audience. Be aware of your own facial expression and hand gesture. You may want to smile a little at the right juncture. Now, remember to guide the audience through your presentation by using words like firstly, secondly, next. You can consider an interesting introduction. For example, you may want to begin your presentation by asking a question. You can use appropriate multimedia, for example, videos to show the operation of your prototype that your team has built. Remember to portray ownership of the project by using active voice like we, our. Okay, I am very sure the audience is very curious to find out what your project is all about. In conclusion, these are the 5 areas that you can consider when you prepare for your presentation. I hope whatever I have shared will be useful to you. All the best.
Thank you, Mrs. Chai. Alright, and here's our final section, and I'll be talking about this. So far, we've reminded you on pointers in creating well-designed presentation slides and in verbal delivery. But let's think. Even if you've got great diction, say you're really fluent in conveying your ideas, if your recording device or the mode of recording produces a lot of muffled sound, it's still going to be really hard for the judges to understand what you're trying to convey. That is why the way we do our video recording plays an important role in ensuring audio and visual clarity. Now, to understand what's good, sometimes it's helpful to see bad examples so that we can see the contrast. Here's a poor example of the recording setting. Look at it and share with your neighbor what's not ideal about this. Okay, so I give you some time. Please talk to your friend right now. Okay, I hope you have shared with your friend. You've probably noticed that the screen is really unclear, right? The image seemed washed out. Also, notice that the projector screen appears quite far away from the camera. Is it because the camera wants to social distance from the screen? So the question is, how does the distance of camera to screen affect the footage that's captured of your projector screen? Now you need to know that recording devices, especially when you set it to auto mode, will try to balance the exposure of the entire footage that it captures. So if the camera is far away from the screen, the camera is going to pick up other surrounding objects around the screen, right? So it wants to bring clarity to those surrounding objects elsewhere. So naturally the screen is going to be compromised. It's going to become overexposed, something like what you see in this picture. That's really not helpful for the judges because they really need to see the content of the screen clearly, all your text, all your graphics. So how to fix that? We can improve by bringing the camera closer so that the screen takes up a greater portion of the footage. You may need to experiment a little so that the presenters won't inadvertently appear too dark in the footage. Adjust the lighting of the room too, making sure that there's no glaring light that affects the projection on the screen. What about this example? Share with your neighbor what you think of it. Okay, I hope that you can see that the media used down here is too small. The presenter's head looks like it's the main focus of the footage, and the judges wouldn't be able to know the content of what the person is pointing at since they are too small. Also, you can see that the presenter probably loves nature and is filming with trees behind him. And I think the bird looks like it's also interested to hear about the project. Learning point, let's choose a more discrete background without distracting elements. And this last one is an extreme example. Basically, this person printed out his slides on A4 paper, pasted it all around the wall behind him, and recorded the video. Honestly, this way no one can see what's shown on the A4 paper in the video. And all that the judges is observing would be a person trying to present white sheets of paper with invisible content. Super awkward. Those previous examples are to highlight on what not to do, and hopefully you won't do that. What about good practices? We've reviewed a number of video submissions from last year, and we've seen really successful examples of presentations that are clear and appealing to the judges. For instance, we've seen groups who film their presentations within the classroom, and the audio is clear, the lighting is well balanced, and we can see the contents shown on the screen very well. It means that they took time to experiment to make sure that the camera is able to capture the footage well. Also, some groups showcase props to facilitate understanding and even included recorded videos of how their prototypes work. You can really see their effort and the strong pride that they have in their projects. And some project teams went the extra mile to include subtitles, which is helpful, though not entirely necessary if the audio and visual elements are clear in the first place. So those were the great work showcased last year. And this year, it will now be your turn to do your 5-minute video recording if you get into the finals. Which recording mode would you opt for? First, let's talk about the standard way of recording, which is basically doing it in a room, projecting the PowerPoint slides on a screen, and the presenters are standing near it. Now, this is the closest you can get to the real thing, where the judges can see your full body language and discern whether you are able to speak confidently up front. Opting for this format also helps to train your public speaking skills, which is a great personal development. It is also easier to engage the viewer through the use of props, showcasing certain components or materials used in your project, as well as to demonstrate how your prototype works, because you can just pick it up and show it to the camera. Now, as for things to note, before you start presenting, please do a trial to see whether text and diagrams on the screen can be seen clearly and whether the audio is clear. You may need to experiment with the lighting in the room. Also, the recording device should not be too far away from the screen, like what I mentioned before. Otherwise, not only the screen is unclear, the audio volume may also be a bit too low. Now, as for the recording equipment, well, it's up to what's available to you. Do realize that camcorders and good quality cameras tend to capture better sound for your presentation. Why is that so? The inbuilt microphones are designed to capture frontal audio. Now, you might be thinking of using a smartphone for recording. Well, take note that they typically use tiny condenser microphones, so the audio capture of the presentation can be quite weak. So I personally feel that it's not ideal to use smartphones unless you have no other choices. Also, a tip, if your group is presenting in this mode, you can make use of a pointer to point at the screen so that the viewer knows exactly which part of the chart or diagram you are referencing. The speaker can be the one doing that pointing, or one of the members in the group can be the one helping to do that during the presentation. So these are some things to note if you're recording in this manner. Now, what about alternatives? An alternative that doesn't require the use of a camcorder would be to use our favorite video conferencing platform, Zoom, for our recording. How do we go about doing that? Here's a demonstration. Let's talk about how we can use Zoom to do your recording. Now, the first 3 steps are pretty standard, so I won't be demonstrating. The first thing, please start a new Zoom meeting and then invite your other group members to be in. Next thing, get everyone to turn on your webcam so that you are able to see one another at this point. The third thing is you need someone to share the screen of the PowerPoint slide. This person will also be the one controlling the pace of the slides. I will demonstrate point 4 onwards. So, since you have turned on the webcam, you should be able to see the webcam footage somewhere. It is actually on a floating window. And what you can do to this window is, if you feel that the footage is a bit too small, you can change it bigger by clicking and dragging the corner of this window. Okay, so adjust to a level that you like. And very importantly at this point, please bring this window to the top right corner. Okay, this is because Zoom will always by default place your webcam footage at the top right corner. Next, if everyone is ready to record, you can then go up to the toolbar. Go to More, which is the last option here, and you can choose to record on this computer. You can also see that there is a keyboard shortcut of alternate R. So there's 2 options. You can use keyboard. You can also click to begin.
This meeting is being recorded.
So once you click on that, you can hear that audio prompt. You can start your presentation immediately after that prompt. So you can have different people speaking, and you will also see that the webcam footage will adjust accordingly. So once everyone is done speaking, you can then stop your recording by pressing alternate R, or to go up to the toolbar and choose to stop recording.
The recording has stopped.
And then you will again give that audio prompt. Then once you end the meeting, Zoom will convert the recording and webcam footage into a single MP4 file. You can then locate the file in the folder as shown here. You have seen how to record the presentation locally through Zoom. Can you also opt to use cloud recording instead? Sure thing, but according to Zoom, it will take more time to process the video if you want to do cloud recording. So that's why I suggest recording locally so that you can get the video file faster. You might find that there's a need to trim away unwanted parts at the beginning or at the end of your video recording. If you want to do that, there are several online video editing options. Just search for video trimmer and you can choose one that does not include any watermarks within your video. This way of recording allows the viewer to see both the slides and the webcam footage clearly at the same time. It is relatively easy. You can do it even when socially distanced. Different group members can also speak at different junctures during the presentation, as Zoom will automatically switch the webcam footage accordingly. You also won't require a camcorder, just use a laptop with a webcam. Now for things to note, remember, audio clarity is really crucial. If you are experiencing poor Wi-Fi signals, it will negatively affect the recording. So please look for a location with very stable network connection. Also, check whether your device is able to pick up your voice clearly. Some laptops may have poor inbuilt microphone, so I highly recommend at least using a earpiece with microphone. Better still, make use of an external microphone if you have one. Also, the person controlling the slides will need to rehearse when to advance those slides. This requires team effort and coordination. If you use Zoom, obviously you must leave the top right-hand corner of your slides blank because you want to accommodate the webcam footage there. Also, for professionalism, try to look for a location with a plain background where there's no distracting background elements. Or if your device can support virtual background in Zoom, you can utilize that feature too. So far I've introduced two ways of recording. The final method I'm introducing is using PowerPoint's Record Slideshow function. Take note that this is only available in some of the newer versions of PowerPoint. So let's now look at a demonstration. On the toolbar, you can see that there's an option, Slideshow. Then you can see a button which is for Recording Slideshow. Press that, and now you will see this screen. And one thing you'll see at the bottom is that you can turn on or off the microphone. You can also turn on and off the camera. Please make sure that both of them are turned on. Also, you will see some options for you to scribble things, different color pens. So if you want to annotate anything on the slides, you can also make use of this. The most important button that you need to know how to press is your record button, of course, right? So once you are ready to begin, you can then press record. Okay, it does a countdown, and then you can start talking. And take note of this fact is that when you're transiting between the slides, do make sure that you stop talking, okay, before you then move on to the next slide. Otherwise, there may be some awkward pause in the middle. Once you're ready to stop your recording, you can then press the stop button. Once you exit and get back to the main screen, you will see that you have a webcam footage at the bottom right corner. Can you shift it around? Of course you can, okay, but when you shift it, you are only affecting one slide, so you also need to do it for the other slides. Also, you can customize in many other ways, for example, making your video footage larger, or when you go up to video format, you can also see that there's quite a number of options here. So if you want to add a very strange border, you want to have shadow, it's also up to you to customize. Okay, you can also do quite a number of corrections. If you feel that it's a bit too dark or too bright, you can adjust accordingly. Once you feel satisfied, you can go ahead and export. So click File, select Export, choose Create a Video. Next, click on the button, which is to create your video. Your file will be saved as Full HD. Check that your output file is within 5 minutes before your submission. One benefit of this method is that it does not require the use of internet connection as compared to using Zoom. Now for things to note, once again let me highlight that PowerPoint captures webcam footage and audio slide by slide. So transitions between slides in the exported video may not be very smooth. Between Zoom and PowerPoint, I might opt for Zoom because the transitions between slides are smoother and more presenters can be engaged in presenting during the 5 minutes. So depending on what is available to you, decide on the most appropriate recording method for your team and do your best in the presentation. Our primary focus of this workshop video is on clarity in delivery, and we are not covering the rigor in scientific research here. Yet, it is something really crucial that your project team has to look into. So a brief reminder to everyone to look at your project and make sure that you're using sound experimental methods, your research questions are well formulated, so on and so forth. One useful resource to see if you have gaps in your project is the SSEF judging rubrics. You can go online, search for that, and look through those pointers, some of which are shown on the screen right now. It will remind you, for instance, okay, look at this, okay, that we might need to use appropriate statistical methods to evaluate if your results obtained are statistically significant, and also the need to have sufficient data to make conclusive remarks. See, you want to convince the judges through your presentation that the results you obtain in the project is not just due to some randomness. So I do encourage you to use this rubric to evaluate your current project that you have. And now, final tips before you submit your project. Being owners of your project, you probably would have many blind spots that you cannot see yourself, but are apparent to others. The way to overcome this issue is communicate your project with others and humbly receive feedback from them. For example, look for your teachers and be earnest to hear from them. They probably have many questions to ask, and these questions will help to sharpen your thinking. It may get you to realize some loopholes to patch. Please appreciate their honest feedback and remember to thank them for helping your team to improve. Also, have a realistic timeline. You do need a lot of buffer time to ensure that everything can be completed on time, because you know things may crop up along the way. So plan ahead and do not wait till the last minute to complete your submissions. Hope you have learned some useful tips in this session. Work hard for your projects, and once again, enjoy the whole process of research. Thank you.